Nicole Norwood here again. And this week we're going to talk a little bit about relationships, both amongst characters and with colleagues in the industry. And I think I'll start just by sharing a story about an experience I had on my first internship. I was a junior in college. I was interning on a little show at E Network, and I was absolute bottom of the totem pole. I was there to fetch the coffee and run the errands and decals the tapes and do basically all the menial grunt work, which was fine. That was the job. I think what was less fine was the people who really took advantage of that, and not took advantage of it in the sense of assigning lots of work, but just in the manner in which they treated other people. There were some amazing people I met, super talented, lovely human beings. Um, but there was one person not so nice. And unfortunately, that was the person in charge of the show. And they were mean for the sake of being mean and cruel for the sake of being cruel. And the lesson I learned there is really what goes around comes around, because I will tell you that many years later, many years later, when I was an executive hiring writers for a show, this person's name came up and they were the first person I took off the list. So, really important to keep in mind that that person who is getting your coffee, who is your intern, who is your assistant, someday might very well be your boss. So, treat everybody nice. Be kind. You don't have to like everybody, but treat them with like some semblance of decency and humanity. You just never know what other people are going through, what they're dealing with in their lives, and everyone's here to do a job and try and do it well. And really, it's unnecessary to be cruel. By the same token, you will find those people. And I think it's really important, and this is very hard when you're young, um, but to try and take them with a grain of salt. Um, you know, I used to think sometimes when, especially dealing with agents who can be bullies and manipulative and scream and yell, like I would tell myself, okay, these are the guys who got stuffed in lockers when they were in high school, and now this is their revenge. They have success, they have money, and they can get back at all the people who made fun of them. Now, that might be a gross overgeneralization, but it was a way to not crumble when people are um, really uh, being aggressive or mean or yelling or just being generally disrespectful. You got to find a way to just compartmentalize that and put it aside, because you're always going to find those people in this business. And it's really important to not let it get to you, because it can. Uh, and it's interesting, I think that goes for a lot of things. And uh, I had a boss who was not a particularly nice or kind person, who really, in this day and age, would probably have been fired 100 times over in the Me Too movement. But one piece of advice that he gave me, which I've always gone back to and which I think is so true, is that the measure of uh, a good executive, a good writer, is not how you do on a great show, on something that's incredibly successful. It's really the measure of how you are on something that is an unmitigated disaster, or that is not successful, or that doesn't go well. And you should be the person that someone thinks highly of, and people feel like they've put their all into the terrible show just as much as they have into the great show. And I thought that was always a really good piece of advice because whether it succeeds or it fails, people are working really hard, and these stories are important to the people writing them, to the people producing them, to the people who've bought them, and whether, you succeed is somewhat up to chance. And really, like, you should always have respect for the work. So I would say, if you remember one piece of advice, like, that's one that really, really stuck with me. Um, so to take that away from the real world for a minute and think about dysfunction in character, I think is a bit of a different thing. So where character is concerned, I think broken is beautiful, right? Perfection is boring. Like a character who is always nice and does and says everything correctly and works hard for what they want and gets it, it does not make for the most compelling story. So trauma, dysfunction, challenges, conflict, these are all things that are going to make your character and your story that much richer. Embrace it, like, whether it's you channeling something personal from your past, whether it's just a great story you've come up with, whether it's ideas that come from a writing group, a writer's room, use it. Like, broken is beautiful, and we are all broken in some way. Uh, Everyone's got problems, issues, traumas, and it's really important to recognize that. And sometimes I think it's really easy to be so focused on your own journey and what you're going through and how you're perceiving things that you don't take a moment to appreciate that for all the things you're going through, that person you're dealing with is probably going through their own set of issues and challenges. So I would just say, as a reminder, you know, give everybody a little bit of grace, give yourself some grace, and try and be kind.